You're well known for picking up the idea of memes that sort of originated at some level with Richard Dawkins, the idea of an idea propagated across generations. And you even went as far as to describe religion as a virus of the mind in terms of its
that was Richard's term, but yes, okay.
Is that a kind of view you would still stand by today?
Yes, but you've got to be careful about what you mean by a virus. I mean, I think if I often say in lectures, imagine a continuum between what you mean as being a virus of the mind. It's really bad. You know, it's like the flu virus or
usually
AIDS
we
or
think
something.
of a virus in negative terms.
And, yes, and they aren't always. So imagine that you think, you know, religions is utterly bad, or you think religion's utterly wonderful and utterly good, and all in between. I think Richard is way down there, and I'm somewhere here. I think by and large, on balance, the world would be a better place without any religions. But the religions would not thrive if they didn't have within them things which are positive. I mean, we know at a personal level, at a society level, the worst societies are more religious. At a personal level, there's evidence that people are happier and they have better social connections and so on if they're religious. So I don't think we would be stuck with these horrible memes if it weren't for the fact that they also have some good qualities.
What do you make of the whole meme theory and the fact that Sue does feel ultimately...
I think it's a shallow derivation of the idea of archetype, and that Dawkins would do well to read some Jung. In fact, if he thought farther and wasn't as blinded by his a priori stance about religion, he would have found that the deeper explanation of meme is in fact archetype.
I disagree. I mean,
Can you just first of all explain archetype for those who are not perhaps familiar with that particular psychological
Well, an archetype is partly a pattern of behavior that's grounded in biology. So it's the behavior itself. So you could think about that as both the instinct and the manifestation of that instinct, but it's also the representation of that pattern. So part of what's coded in our mythological stories, for example, are images of typical patterns of behavior. And those are the typical patterns of behavior that make us human. I really want to have this discussion about memes, by the way, because it's really a discussion that needs to be had. Because I think that the meme idea is very interesting, and I do think that there are contagious ideas, but that needs to be chased down much deeper, because there are ideas that are so contagious that we've actually adapted to them biologically. And once that happens, they're no longer merely memes. They're something else. They're built into us. I can give you...
These archetypes, as you describe.
Yeah, well, I can give you a kind of example of that. So imagine, I'll have to try to do this relatively rapidly. It's very complicated, so I'm hoping I can do it. So imagine that we live in dominance hierarchies. We don't have to imagine that. That happens to be the case. They're at least 350 million years old. So they're really, really old. So the idea of the archetype of dominance is older than our ability to perceive trees, right? It's really down there. And our nervous system is fully adapted to the existence of dominance hierarchies. It's one of the things the serotonergic system tracks. Okay, so now we also know that your position in a dominance hierarchy, especially if you're male, is proportionate to your reproductive success. The higher you up in the hierarchy, the more likely you are to succeed. Okay, so what that means is that males have been selected for their ability to move up a dominance hierarchy. But that's not quite right. They've been selected for their ability to move up the set of all possible dominance hierarchies. And that's a very abstract set. And there's a set of characteristics that go along with the ability to move up the set of all possible dominance hierarchies that's represented in religious terms as the optimal ethical manner in which to conduct yourself.
I see.
And that's not a meme that's casually passed from person to person. It's way deeper than that.
I think you're being unfair to memes. I would make this response here about the difference between memes and archetypes. So archetypes are there whether we have memes or not. All of that history of evolution is there.
Yes.
So we have, ideas about sex differences or ideas about dominance is a very good example that don't require memes. They can then become memes. And a meme by definition, as Dawkins started it out, is that which is imitated, or that which is copied from person to person. So the idea of dominance hierarchies can be a meme, and all the ideas we build on top of that, as long as we pass it from person to person. Now,
we could certainly think of hierarchies of memes from
yes, indeed,
from ones that are no more than fads that wash across the culture to ones that are permanent. But you were kind of
trivializing memes, and I think the power of the idea of memes is this: we have the first replicator, genes on the planet, and we know the consequences of that, producing all these organisms. But the idea about memes is that they are a second replicator. So genes are copied by chemical processes in bodies. Memes are copied by imitation and other kinds of interactions between human beings, and very little in any other species at all. And that's what gives rise to culture. So the whole theory about memes is one of many ways of trying to understand the evolution of culture. And in that way, I say it's not trivial
quick
at all.
Response, and I want to move on to talking about the 12 rules, Jordan.
Well, the issue is what happens when a meme is so widely distributed that it becomes a determining factor in evolution itself. Because it translates
meme gene co-interaction.
Yes, exactly. Well, see, that's where I think the religious, for me, that's the grounds of the essential religious instinct. It's a meme gene interaction, and it goes back forever.
Yes.
And then I'll finish with this. See, because once you see that there's a meme gene interaction and that there's selection in favor of a certain meme, let's say, then you open up the entire question of what constitutes the underlying reality. Because you see, this is something I tried to have a talk with about Sam Harris, and we augured in very rapidly. You could say that reality is that which selects. Now, it's not exactly a materialist viewpoint. It's more of an evolutionary viewpoint. And if reality is that which selects, then what's selected by that reality is in some sense correct. Now, that's not, this is why
you're adding on that's a big claim you're adding on.
I know it's a big claim. I understand it's a big claim, but it's also the central claim of pragmatism.